I'm Angenette Levy, and welcome to my channel. Please do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button, smash the bell, and please, if you would, subscribe. I have something really serious I want to tell you about. It's about a lawsuit filed by the mother of Maddie Mogen. Her name is Karen Laramie, and Maddie was Karen's only daughter, her only child. And this has been, as it has been for all of the other victims who were murdered on King Road, excruciating. If you watch the Idaho documentary on Prime, Amazon Prime, you saw the pain that Maddie Mogen's mother is going through, that she continues to endure. And it's awful. This case is horrible. It's one of the worst I've ever covered. And I've covered really awful cases. Each murder case is awful for its own reasons. But this one, the murders on King Road, are particularly horrible. Maddie Mogen's mother has sued the city of Moscow, and she doesn't want any more crime scene photos released, specifically photos of Maddie's bedroom. These photos were first released about 2 weeks ago, and we shared some of them that did not show horrible things. We didn't have the ones that showed horrible things, but I've seen some of them, and they're awful. And we wouldn't show those. We routinely make decisions not to show certain material. These photos, the release of them was very upsetting to Maddie Mogen's mother, Karen. It was also very upsetting, I'm sure, to all of the families, but then also upsetting to the family of Ethan Chapin, his parents, Stacy and Jim, and then his siblings, Maisie and Hunter. So they are going to be joining this lawsuit. Karen Laramie has an attorney named Leander James. He has been representing her for some time now, pro bono. That means he's not charging her for his services. They are going to join the lawsuit. They don't want any more of the crime scene photos. They don't really want any of these photos released. They don't want the body cameras released, it sounds like, but they can't stop that. This is a criminal investigation, and media outlets routinely obtain these materials through records requests. We do it every day at Law and Crime. Every place I've ever worked, when we cover crimes, we request these materials. But we decide what we will show. We don't show deceased people. We don't show gruesome things. So Maddie's mother went to court and asked for an injunction. That means an order that would bar the city of Moscow from releasing any more of these images from the bedroom, whether those are photographs or body-worn camera materials. They would be redacted. And the photos that were released by the city of Moscow were redacted. There was blurring and things like that, but you could still see some things. And of course, that was very upsetting to the families, and it's always going to be upsetting to them. So she's been granted a temporary restraining order, Maddie's mother has, which is barring the city from releasing anything else until they have this hearing. And so they want this hearing on an injunction, which is basically a permanent order that would bar the city from releasing any more images from the bedrooms of Maddie specifically. But then when the Chapins joined the suit, from Xana's bedroom, which shows Xana and Ethan. Of course, Maddie and Kaylee were in Maddie's bedroom. That's where they were killed. And these are gruesome, gruesome crime scenes. So there will be a hearing on this. It's supposed to be happening this week, but it may not happen. It may be delayed for some time. But I spoke with Leander James. He is the attorney for Maddie's mother, Karen, and now representing the Chapins. They're joining this lawsuit. And he talked about why they don't want these images released. Basically, they feel it's causing them suffering to see more of this stuff out there. So take a listen. I know you've been representing Maddie's mother for a while now. What prompted her, aside from the release of these photos by Moscow police, to come to you, obviously, and ask you to see if there was something they could do to prevent more photos of her bedroom from being released?
Well, I've been the pro bono attorney for Karen and Scott Maddie's mother and stepfather for more than 2 years now, and have been sort of navigating them through the case, the criminal case, and their involvement in it, and our involvement in working with the prosecutor. And along with that, sort of the arc of recovery. In each of these cases, there's sort of an arc of recovery for the crime victims, and that relates to what we're going to talk about today, because when we got to the sentencing phase, both for them and for the Chapins, the sentencing phase provided some closure. Mr. Miller was sentenced. The door slammed behind him. He went to prison for the rest of his life, and that gave him a chance to sort of breathe and the ability to move on. Now, at the same time, the judge lifted the gag order that had stopped any information from going out. So here we have the city of Idaho, and I wouldn't say it's the police that are releasing these photos. It's the city that was releasing them, and they started to release photos without giving us notice or even the prosecutor notice. The prosecutor didn't even know. In fact, I found out when the prosecutor called me to alert me that the city was releasing or getting ready to release photos. And at that point, I only represented Karen and Scott. Karen asked me, and I was more than willing to do it, to file a what's called an injunction, along with a temporary restraining order, to stop the release of these photos. Now, an injunction is asking a judge to stop someone from doing something. They're enjoined from doing something. If you win an injunction, the court tells them you can't do that. In this case, you can't give out the images of the death scenes. The temporary restraining order is a preliminary process where the judge temporarily and immediately stops the person from doing it, so that we can look at it closer and decide what the proper decision is on the law for the injunction, which is permanent. So what I filed both the injunction, and then in the context of the injunction, within the case of the injunction, I asked the judge for a temporary restraining order, which are rarely granted. Those are very, very, very rare. In fact, the judge has to order that you post a bond in case you lose to pay the other side's attorney's fees. I asked the judge to grant that and to also set the bond at $0, which she did. She did both. She granted the temporary restraining order, preventing the pictures from being released any further from the city, including the images, including the body camera images of the first officers on the scene. You can imagine how gory that would be. And even though they were redacted and blurred out in spots, she felt they should not go out under the exception in the FOIA statute, which we can talk about if you like. There's an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy exception.
So as it stands right now, under the temporary restraining order, the judge feels it is an invasion of privacy. Is that for everything, or just certain items inside the bedrooms of the victims, both Maddie and Xana?
Yeah, her specific order is that the images of the bedroom, of Maddie's bedroom, are not to be released. She did not apply it or say that with respect to the other bedroom. However, the city took, I think, a cautious approach that they should, and is withholding both bedroom images from being released any further. What I will argue to the judge is that the statute, the city's obligation to apply the statute, including the exception, is an affirmative obligation that applies to all images. Nobody has to come forward and ask them to do this. They're supposed to do it correctly. And this was my disagreement with the city. I tried to resolve it with the city. I tried to reach a resolution. I did not want to file a lawsuit against the city, but I had to, because they disagreed with me and thought these bedroom photos could be released. These death scene photos, the nice way to say it is the bedroom photos, but they're death scenes. And we disagreed on that. That's why I had to file the injunction. I will be asking the judge to apply it. Of course, now that I represent the Chapins, and they will join the lawsuit. They haven't yet, but they will in the coming days become plaintiffs in the lawsuit. I will ask that it apply to both bedrooms, and
Mhm.
and I think it should already, because again, the affirmative duty of the city to follow the statute.
So the city's argument is that with redaction, it should be released. And your position is no, even with redaction, it should not.
Correct. Yeah. They gave me what they called a representative sample of the photos that they're releasing. And they're really three types. There's the images of the outside of the house, images inside the house of personal areas, including living room, bathroom, dining room, that type of thing, kitchen. And then there's images of the death scenes in the bedroom. Now, my core objection is to the images of the death scene in the bedrooms.
Mhm.
Now, for my clients and for the parents and the family members, it's distressing to have any of these images out there, right?
Correct.
This whole thing to continue to be perpetuated in the press is distressing. And you know, and I'll say for myself, the only reason I'm talking to the press and talking to you is because I think it's beneficial to them to get this message out about these photos, that we shouldn't be looking at them, and they want that message to go out. But for the most part, they would like to move on with their lives. And but coming back to the images, you have the outside images, which were really, you know, those are going to be released. You can't really stop that. They're, you know, not arguably not objectionable. There's the interior of the house photos, which I find somewhat distressing, and I would rather they not be released. But I recognize under FOIA and the broad, policy in the law to allow for the public to access investigatory records. You know, there's a large body of law on that. Generally, in this free society that we have, we want the public to be able to scrutinize investigations and have access to this information. But there are these narrow exceptions, and the one here, the unwarranted invasion into personal privacy. And there is a very good case that was authored by Judge Medema in Boise, a district court judge who gave a really astute history of this exception, along with other things. And what the takeaway is from that case is that death scene photos infringe upon, releasing them as an unwarranted invasion into the privacy of the family members. That's the bottom line. And that's what I argued to the court.
And so the judge agreed with you, at least for the TRO. So you believe this case will support your position for the injunction, which would permanently bar the city from releasing the images of the bedrooms.
Correct. I not only will I have now, I had at the time of the ruling, I had the testimony of Karen, and how distressing it was for her to the thought that any of this is getting out. You know, particularly the scenes, the death scenes. And I guess, one of your questions touched on this, and I want to emphasize, even though they're blurred out and redacted in parts, there's gruesome stuff in there. I saw them. I was given a representative sample, and that in the sample I had, there were these death scene photos that were just gruesome as could be, even though it's sort of blurred out. It's almost even worse when it's blurred out, because you get your mind to, you can kind of see what's in there in the blurred part, and the non-blurred part, there's gruesome stuff. So in the end of the day, the judge looked at the same photos and ultimately ruled in our favor. And for the preliminary injunction, we'll see what happens, or a temporary restraining order, we'll see what happens with the injunction. But I began to say, when I filed it, I had Karen's testimony. Now I have the Chapins that I'm representing. I have their testimony, including their daughter, Maisie, who wanted to be a party to the case. So we will be providing that testimony. And I also have other testimony out there that I'm going to present that will be, I think, strong evidence in favor of protecting these photos.
Are you able to share what that is at this time, or?
Well, I'll just say this much. I expect to have a declaration from someone in your industry, in the media, that will speak to this. And I'll also have my own declaration that will, because I've been told since by certain media, and I'm going to be very discreet about this, but I will say that certain media have told me that it is, in their view, it's improper to show these photos, even though they had access to them, they wouldn't publish them. And I think that's good evidence that in the industry, even the industry itself, there are at least some who believe this is an unwarranted invasion.
Well, and I mean, to be clear, I mean, there are standards, even at my company, we don't publish photographs, even though we cover courts and crime and trials. We don't publish images of people who are deceased.
Absolutely.
If we had those photos, we wouldn't publish images of somebody's deceased, even if blurred. We've obtained images like that before in many cases, and we don't show it. It's not necessary. We know what happened. And to be frank with you, I've seen some of these images that you're referring to, and we didn't disseminate them. I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, some of these are very gruesome. Is the concern that other people aren't so discerning? I'm assuming that is one of the major concerns.
Absolutely. There is one major news outlet that published one of the more of the bedroom photos, and I think they've since maybe pulled it off or redacted it. But there's the standards get to be what should be released under FOIA. Now that's on the city. They got to figure that out, and they got to get it right. And I tried to help them get it right, and they rejected my input, and so that's why I filed the lawsuit. Now we have the judges going to tell us what that standard is. The second is what you're talking about, that there's a standard in the industry, in media industry. You could say mainstream versus tabloid or whatever, but there's a mainstream sort of standard out there of what you would produce or what we publish and wouldn't. That's a case by case basis, but there is sort of a mainstream standard out there. And then you have in each news organization, you have the editors that get together and they have these conversations of what should we produce, what should we publish. And I have literally had a news organization, a couple of them now, apologize and say they got it wrong because they had published some of these photos. And that's, again, partly why I'm talking to you. I'm trying to get the word out, and I'm imploring people not to look at these if they're out there, and to please don't publish them if they're out there.
No, I understand. It'll come down, I think you're right, to what the law is under FOIA. And so you'll be arguing that in front of the judge on Thursday. And so
that may change. I was contacted by the city today, and they requested that we continue the hearing for a little while and keep the preliminary or the temporary restraining order in place. They want to reassess their position. I think that's a wise thing to do. I welcome them doing that. Again, I'm all for trying to resolve things peacefully. I don't want to have, the motto of my firm is helping people solve problems. It's not helping people sue people. I mean, I'm trying to reach, I want to solve the problem. I want to reasonably for all involved, the city, my clients, and the nearly 1,000 FOIA requesters that they have. But I want this to be done right and properly. And so we may move the hearing date to allow the city to reassess their position. I am hoping that they will come around to my point of view.
Well, we will keep an eye on it and see how this unfolds, and what comes of it. Thank you so much, Leander James, attorney for Karen Laramie and Scott Laramie, and now the Chapin family. I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your interest.
So again, I mean, we have requested, where I work, law and crime, we have requested body worn camera footage, but there's just stuff that you just don't show. There are things that don't need to be shown. So we are going to wait and see what happens with this. And so I will keep you posted. Stay tuned. Please let me know what you thought of this video in the comments. Also, remember to hit that thumbs up, the subscribe button, and let me know where you've been watching from in the comments as well. I always like to see that. I'll see you soon.